I'm gonna redo it.
Oh, you're gonna redo that one? Okay. Action. Hey!
Hi.
We're here for another episode of the anime podcast, the Thanksgiving edition.
I'm multitasking this time.
Yeah, she's drawing. She's doing on-the-fly drawing. And we have a little turkey here joining us.
Turning into Thanksgiving.
Yeah. We remember that Thanksgiving is a holiday.
Yes.
So those of you that decorated early, shame on you. Making that judgment call now.
But people do that all the time.
I know, yeah. Yeah, I also understand that Christmas is like a big deal for a lot of people. And I don't blame them. I just judge them.
Christmas is basically for 2 months.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyways, so welcome to our anime podcast.
Yes, hello.
And we're going to be talking about episode 11 and 12 of My Hero Academia and Violet Evergarden.
Yes.
And it gets real in these episodes. Let me tell you straight. If you were expecting a lot of action and people getting murked, these are the episodes.
It's a very sad couple of episodes.
Yeah.
The next couple of times.
Yeah, so this week we're going to be covering 2 episodes. Next week, while everybody was trailing off, eating turkey and all that stuff, we're going to be doing the season finale and then kind of like a complete kind of, what would I say, like our impressions of the whole season altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And hope y'all enjoy. So just quick housekeeping, just like, subscribe, spread the word, ring that bell to get all the notifications. And without further ado, we're going to be talking about Violet Evergarden.
Yay! Violet Evergarden, such a depressing anime.
Yeah, well, we're going to start on a very high note of an episode, 11. Which I've checked on IMDb, like the episode's called "I Don't Want Anybody Else to Die." Violet.
That's such a depressing title.
Yeah. The CH Postal Company gets a request for a doll from a neighboring country, Citrigal. However, the country is in a state of civil war between people who are the warmongers versus the moderates. So basically kind of like a faction of people that still wants war even though the war has ended.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of like Hodgins wants somebody else other than Violet to go, but Violet took it upon herself to go.
Mm-hmm.
And she makes the trip all the way up there. And we get to learn about one of the person that asked for Violet, Aiden, who's part of the moderate faction. We get to learn a little bit about his background. And there's a reason for that. And that reason is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because we find out that part of, protecting, your country from like these moderate forces and stuff like that and try to quell them off from your land involves a lot of people dying.
Mm-hmm.
And before Violet gets to Aiden, she has to deal with certain things about transportation and people kind of like still underestimating her.
Mm-hmm.
She's still during her travels. She's tried to get some transportation up towards the north, but she gets stopped because people just assume like, why are you just trying to go up there?
Yeah.
They just assume like she's like kind of like a woman, so it's like who's going to protect you. But it wasn't until like how she talked and everything like that. All of that seemed to kind of like, okay, like the person that did the other postal company that was in the other country said like, okay, we'll take you up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he happens to be a pilot.
Yep.
As they're traveling, Violet spots kind of like the aftermath of a battle, which happens that Aiden falls. He gets shot a few times. And she goes down. And what's the weird thing is, it's the warmonger faction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of knows the reputation of Violet to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Which, at the time, I felt like, okay, so are these the same people from, like, intense, or like are these the opposite countries still kind of like they know of her reputation. The next episode that we're going to talk about, we start to learn that the leader to some degree knows Violet.
Right.
But in this episode, we get like a little taste of what's to come, and Aiden, sorry, I got to learn to breathe while talking because I feel like breathing exercises.
Just gotta.
I know, like I feel like I'm gonna pass out right now.
No, don't do that.
No, I'm just kidding. But Violet takes Aiden to a little cabin in the woods situation, and she then starts to write essentially farewell letters to Aiden's kind of love interest, Maria, and to his family members, and like confessing his love and all this stuff. But what's that really gets me in this episode is like towards the end when Violet goes and sends these letters. It was like
so depressing.
So depressing. But I thought I really liked this episode because even though they don't get to see their family member and like lover back, it was just kind of like one of those situations that they know with a matter of fact that he's gone.
Yeah.
And it's like a form of like they know, you know what I mean? There's like no questioning,
Like you can't debate about it like not happening. It's already
Exactly.
like 100% guaranteed that it's a thing. I don't know, this episode all over was sad, but I think it shows like the grim realities of war.
Yeah.
The things that a lot of people don't really think about. And also another thing, I think this episode teaches you not to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of these characters, especially like Violet, she doesn't seem like a character that would go off to war and be in the war and something like that. But then she has the experience of being a soldier, and so when she drops onto the field, everyone's just like, why are you here?
Like, what's going on? And something that kind of reminds me about another anime, kind of like that Rurouni Kenshin arc to some degree, is like, it was like she's like one of these revered soldiers, warriors now, but like now she wants to live like a path of like, not ultimately killing people, you know what I mean? Like she has like a shift in kind of like mentality, and she wants to like serve as many people as possible, which I felt like now her story is kind of wrapping up in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I really enjoyed this episode, even though it was
it's so grim.
It's so grim. It's a soul crushing of an episode, but it's great though. It's really good. And do you have any thoughts about this episode in general?
Well, I definitely thought it was probably one of the more depressing episodes. Granted, I don't think it compares to like what other episodes have there been. I think the most depressing one was definitely the one with the mother.
Yeah.
Like that one got me. This one still kind of gets me, but more in the sense that like you think about the things that are happening in the world right now, and it's kind of like you can kind of relate and understand to a lot that happens, and you're just kind of like, this is sad, this is depressing, and like I don't know, like I just think this episode kind of, like I said earlier, shows you the grim realities of some things that people go through in life,
And it's like showing, like, it's like highlighting something that not many people may have like a intimate understanding of, you know what I mean? And it's like a way to try to kind of like explore those emotions,
I think it's also kind of sad that it's like a lot of people don't really get to hear the last words of their loved ones sometimes. But she wrote this letter as he was dying, and then gave it to his lover, which is in itself just like mind-boggling.
Yeah, and it's really heavy. Yeah.
Did you have any feelings about it? Did you like it?
I did like it, even though it just like stabbed me in the heart and of like, oh my god, the feels, But I did enjoy it in that level, in the level of like this whole story of how Violet is growing and changing. It's like it's a lot of her development.
Yeah, definitely.
In this one episode, you see her start to understand like war has a price to it. You know what I mean? Like maybe not in a sense that she learned it before. Like maybe she I feel like she has to some degree, but never really kind of stopped and think and talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like having Aiden and um, him wanting to say his like final words and stuff is like it's really powerful for her and her development in that whole character arc. Yeah.
I think it also shows the importance of her as a letter writer.
Yeah.
Because I think an integral part of her character is the fact that she eventually grows to understand emotions through writing these letters for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if it kind of progresses her story further, because up until now you've seen kind of like the significance of her writing it in the standpoint of like you're passing on messages and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think this one is the one that it truly like impacts her on like what her doing this job really means.
Yeah, and like the kind of like the positive impact that that it has, like, you know, like letting people know like 100%, like, you know, like don't.
I feel like this also acts as her redemption arc in a way.
For her actions in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't necessarily get a way to redeem herself from the war, you know? So once she kind of gets injured and loses her hand and all of that type of stuff, I guess you can say that her redemption is her entire story in the anime, but I think this one directly addresses the war portion of her feeling kind of like the guilt of not really of being a murderer to like all these people, and then having kind of like a list of names that she's killed before.
Yeah.
You know, but everything else that has happened so far has kind of been like, I need to learn to understand my emotions. And then this one is like, how do I put the lessons that I've learned or the emotions that I have gained through working this job into my past that has directly influenced the lives of other people.
Right. And to the point of like the ultimate change, and I know I've been saying this over and over again, but like if you literally see this episode and then compare it with the first episode, you see her going from this person that only knows about war and only knows about serving in an active military style versus this person now that ultimately understands, and to some degree she really does have empathy. She does know you know, what these emotions are. Like, you know, maybe she can't necessarily 100% articulate these emotions. Like, she knows and understands like these are important to people. You know, and so yeah, this whole episode on a character development standpoint is really good. Going from the last 2 episodes we did, which were the ones where she was going through a depression, and then the daughter episode.
Yep.
And also the daughter episode was, this episode was directly after the daughter episode. So there was 2 episodes where you just kind of like got punched in the feels. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun in the sense it's like, it's a great story, and like I feel so invested in it that I want to see how it ends. Literally when I saw these episodes together, I was just like, I just need to figure out how this all ends now. You know? And this is the problem of binging. And let's just go ahead and move on to the next episode, episode 12, which I couldn't find a name for. There was no name. But Violet is coming back from her job from Aiden's parents' house. They're coming down from a plane, and notices some interesting things. So there's some explosions and stuff like that. But quick preference, I'm a little bit ahead of myself on my notes. We start this episode with Dietfried first, the brother. And he's tasked to protect a special envoy to kind of confirm like the peace treaty, you know? On the opposite end, the people that killed Aiden earlier, the warmongers, we find out that it was one of the commanders at Intense. So this plays like a part with Violet, because this person seen Violet at one point or another, and Violet to some degree may not. I don't think she knows him, but she knows if he's the person at Intense, therefore must know like they killed the major. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of like kind of like drama in that sense. So Dietrich is ordered to protect a special envoy for kind of formally ending the war. Meanwhile, the anti-rebel peace faction by Murkoff is planning to ambush the envoy, and then Catalea and Benedict are accompanying the envoy. So part of the agreement is that the people of the South, like Leiden, is gonna send as many like auto memory dolls to kind of help with kind of like easing tensions between the North and the South situation. Right. And earlier, as I explained, Violet is trying to make her way down south through her kind of airplane situation. But she sees some explosions on the tracks and stuff like that, and tries to let the people know in that city what's going on. You know what I mean? And
to like warn them.
To kind of warn them. Right. And she also notices from a very high standpoint that Catalea and Benedict was on the train, and then she literally jumps off the plane to get to the train.
Oh gosh.
So apparently Violet has
so she's kind of a god.
Yeah, god mode enabled. And she gets to the train, and Violet talks about Dietrich and like kind of like the brother situation, and she ultimately gets to stay on the train.
Thank God.
Yeah. And now she... Yeah, and pretty much it, I think... Oh, yeah, and then, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, my notes are not very organized, and I gotta do this better. Second season.
One day it'll improve.
One day it'll improve. It's all about improving incrementally.
It's with experience.
Yeah. So they talk about Gearwood's death and all that, and then as the train's moving and making its way towards the north, it gets ambushed by Murkoff's men. And towards the end of the episode, Violet fights on top of the train,
which is amazing in itself.
It's like every Bond movie,
except without the girl.
But the girl is the Bond in the situation.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Yeah. Think about it that way. Yeah, and Violet deflects a grenade shot with with her prosthetic arm, and it kind of cliffhangers at that point. But this is a good episode. Nothing too negative or I wouldn't say not positive. Like this episode is kind of like the setup before the season finale.
Right.
You know what I mean? It puts all the players at a certain point in time so they could all be together.
It's like the build-up.
Yeah. It's a very build-up-y episode. It needs to get all these characters together and stuff like that. Something that that I don't think I ever noticed, Benedict wear high heels all along. Probably has calves of steel by the end of the series. But anyways, yeah, I don't think I have any negative feelings. When I saw this episode, I was kind of like attached with trying to figure out what's their plan, what they're trying to do, what's from point A to point B, what they're trying to do, and there's not too much in the way of character development other than Dietrich talking to Violet about Gilbert to that degree.
Right.
Do you have anything about this episode?
I think it was probably one of the most action-packed episodes that they have.
I think the thing that I liked about this episode a lot is it's very forward moving.
Yeah.
So things like traveling from the plane and from the plane to the train and the train moving and
it's progressively moving the storyline further into the climatic section of the anime.
Yeah, and that sense of movement, it just really plays well with what's going on the screen and everything.
I think it actually goes with something you said last week, where you were like, I feel like a common thing with anime is that it has a really action-packed portion, and then something happens, right?
Yeah, like it's all boiling and going up to a point towards the end of the season or series. In this case, I don't know if there's going to be another series of Violet Evergarden.
I don't know either. I mean, I would hope it does because it's a really good anime to me. At least it's treated me very well and I love it. But honestly speaking, I hope it does end up being that they have another season for it because I think it would provide a lot more context. Also, I kind of want to see the guy come back.
You kind of want to see the guy. Well, I think that seems like a season 1 finale talk, but with these 2 episodes, I think this is a really good series, and I just think.
Do you actually really like it?
I really do enjoy it. I think the part of it is that going from like TV and film and all that stuff, like this is very kind of like theatrical, not theatrical, but like very like. I'm watching like a very good TV show. Everything.
It like falls in line with what you would expect out of TV shows because like I know the expectations of anime and TV is like entirely different.
Right. Yeah.
And they're 2 entirely different mediums. They don't really like mix and match very well with each other. But how do you feel? Like, do you like how it progresses? Because honestly, another big point to differentiate anime from TV is that like. Anime only limits itself to around 15 to 20 episodes per season, whereas you can have something go up to like 20 episodes.
Yeah, like network television was about like 20. Like that's the whole point of 24 back in the day. It's like,
oh my god,
the whole season revolves around 24 hours, and each episode revolves around a specific hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But which is a really cool concept. Anime. Like kind of its pacing, like it having these 13 episodes, seasons, really kind of lends itself to try to make sure that there's not that much filler. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's like when Death Note was still around. The first series. The first series run, like the first season of Death Note, was kind of like very specific. The season was very good. You got this one character versus the other character, and then the kind of like mind games they're trying to put each other through. And it was a very, very solid season. Then season 2 happened. Wasn't as strong.
Did it get ruined?
It didn't get ruined for me. It just felt like they wanted to put up another character to be the same as another character. You know what I mean? Like, they wanted to be like, oh, this is another version of L.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? Did you see Death Note?
I only saw portions of it, but it's been a long time, so I don't exactly remember, like, every single thing from it, to be quite frank.
We should do one season where we just do Death Note, so you could just watch it all the way through.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to rewatch it all over again.
Yeah. But yeah, like, when you're going back to length, it's all like, the great thing is like these 13 episodes can be just like very specific of what they want to tell and what they want to establish. In the case of My Hero Academia, the first season is a lot about establishing these characters and who they are, what their personality is, what are the underlying kind of like messages and philosophies each characters have. So, not to say that the episode or season length is a good or bad thing. I'm just saying, like, a story is a great story because it's focused and it's not trying to draw out some storyline that doesn't like work out in the end. You know what I mean?
Do you think everything in Violet Evergarden so far kind of cohesively matches with each other? Because this anime is very different from a lot of other animes that are out there, where it doesn't follow a chronological order. But do you think it still works?
I feel like it works because once you get sold on the idea that it's her trying to understand what love is and her journey of emotions, you start to kind of like piece each episode as a different aspect of either love or understanding kind of like empathy to
like where she's coming from.
Yeah, where she's coming from and how she's not just trying to change the way she thinks, but just kind of learning and understanding how people are kind of like going about this world and stuff like that.
I see.
So yeah, that's like a very long-winded way of saying that. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things to say about these episodes. You know, the funny thing is, like, when it comes to My Hero Academia, I feel like I'm trying to, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm complaining or anything, but it's just like we have more to talk about with My Hero to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But when Violet Evergarden, like, even though we still have like extra time left for Violet Evergarden, I feel like I really like it to the point like. I like what I like, and then I'm just that's it. I feel like I don't need to explain anything else.
I think there's like in Violet Evergarden, it's a very kind of like self-fulfilling and satisfactory. Like, okay, I don't know how to explain self-fulfilling in like the proper terms, but I think it's like with each episode, as much as it has its own problems, you feel very like settled by the end of it because every episode kind of ties up neatly to like the ending, and it's like tying a bow on top of a present. That one episode is one, and then the next one is one. So every single time you keep watching an episode, it just kind of ends, and that's it. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like with anime like that, it's just very like you feel very good about it afterwards. Yeah. But with like Boku no Hero, it has like kind of like a more conversation and discussion because you're constantly like, what's the next thing that's going to potentially happen? Yeah, I feel like I kind of have to sit down and kind of ruminate and kind of like figure out like where is it gonna go? Where is it gonna go? These character motivations. I think part of it is that I also know that there's other seasons. Yeah. And it's also kind of like I'm kind of like trying to piece it out, like, oh, what's gonna happen next? Well, what's gonna happen here and there? Mm-hmm. But for Violet Evergarden, it's just like what you said earlier. It's like each episode is kind of self-contained. The whole series as a whole, like after watching the whole series, it felt like kind of settled, I feel settled. I feel happy, and it's like even though I see on IMDb it's like 2018 ... I would just be happy if this is just a good one season of anime, that would just be fine with it. And you'd be good with it, right? I'll be good with it. And if I find out that what the second season is not as great, like I'll just be like, well, I still have the first season, and I'll still like the first season. And you'll feel like, well, at least it ended on a high note, right? Yeah, it'll be like one of those things. Yeah, no, I think it's a very satisfactory anime. Like, you feel very good about it afterwards. Mm-hmm. It feels very nice. Everything is kind of like set into like a very nice bow, and it's just an all around very good anime to watch if you ever just kind of want, like, you don't like the expectation of like wanting more, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But it's honestly like one of the best anime I've ever seen. I love it to death. And I say this again, and I'll say it once more. I'm really happy that this is the first kind of anime that I'm like getting myself back into watching more anime, because I think the only thing that I watched altogether is only Brotherhood and Death Note, and that was like the only thing that I watched in between middle school and then like finishing college. And in between then, I just watched Fooly like probably 5 times all over. Really? I really like that anime. Fooly I feel like it looks like a very nice anime, but like I don't know enough about it, so. I really think you don't need to know anything about it. You just kind of go in and just like, hey. Self-explanatory. Yeah. Anyway, so again with a little bit of extra time, and we're gonna let this run out a bit, but on the hourglass. We're gonna just kind of switch over to My Hero real quick, and I don't know what you're doing. You're taking a picture. Oh my god, that's awesome! You got to see. I'm drawing the president from My Hero. We got introduced to the principal of UA, and she took it upon herself to start drawing. I mean, I'm currently doodling all over his stuff. So, it's... By the end of the season, my laptop is just going to be filled with stuff. That's my goal. I'm going to be filling everything that he has here with just stuff. Anyway, so, in episode 11 and 12, so on the previous episode, you get to see, Deku, Frog Girl, Froppy, and, Crybaby little dude. Just Mineta. Kind of deal with a situation. I don't know if I mentioned this on the last episode, but they dealt with the thing I like about these episodes is that
they kind of established the idea of like you're gonna be kind of grouped up with heroes, and you kind of have to like figure out how to work together with your specific different and like varying different quirks, you know.
Yes.
And in the previous episode with Deku, Froppy, and shoot, I keep on forgetting names. Mineta. See, this is why I like having a co-host, because I just don't remember anything.
Even as I'm like drawing this right now.
She has an aside. She's a super fan here.
No, I'm just decking your stuff out, okay?
Okay, and what I like about the season, yeah, it's just I really enjoyed the idea of like being a hero is not just a singular like experience. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about one person. It's about kind of working as a group. You know, and that's what I feel like it's from the very first episode. It was that sort of consistency, you know, like how Violet's whole arc is the whole finding out what love is and finding empathy and feelings. You know what I mean? This season is kind of like trying to define what being a hero is to some degree. You know what I mean? Do you feel the same way on that?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that very strongly, actually.
Really? I was wondering.
Mm-hmm.
So in what way? Like in like a strong way?
Well, first and foremost, you want to give me your opinions on it. I want to kind of get where you feel about the situation, too.
Well, in this case, going up to the 12th episode, I feel it's a very consistent way of building this world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're establishing a world of superheroes. And if you don't set the rules of this world correctly, it just becomes like another kind of like
generic
kind of like Dragon Ball situation. Mm-hmm. Not to say Dragon Ball is bad or anything, but like once you set up the rules of the universe, then you got to play by those rules.
Right, yeah.
And this season, even though there are some parts where I just kind of felt like iffy, has stayed true and stayed on that kind of like topic of like it's gonna respect these rules and then they're gonna go for it. Mm-hmm. And in this season, I started noticing like, yeah, this season is all about trying to figure out what it means to be a hero. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, it looks like being a hero is not just being the hero on your kind of glory situation. You know, kind of like that All Might situation.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was really interesting finding out that All Might wasn't All Might. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. And when I mentioned this on the podcast just right now, as we're saying, like, it's not about just the one person, is that what the principal said on the last episode, understanding your limitations and making sure that you got to trust in your not just your abilities, but the abilities of people around you. Mm-hmm. Because it's not all about you. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like about the season. And kind of like the way they structured this kind of like superhero fantasy thing here. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I need to
flip it back around
and get a breath.
I think I when I first started watching it, I really liked how it set the world kind of in its own place. Like, I remember when I first talked to you about My Hero before you started watching it, I said, like, the main thing I like about it is that it sets its limitations and it doesn't pass those limitations. Like, every hero has a weakness. Yeah. You know? And another thing that I really liked, and I think you might kind of get to the point of, because you kind of have a brief look at it, but you don't really know about too much of everything yet until you get into the later seasons, but almost every single character has a second layer of depth into it. And you mentioned that with All Might, how you learn that All Might is not really like this almighty character. He has like a certain amount of time before he turns into like his smaller, skinnier self. Yeah. And I think, like, with everything else, everybody kind of tries to uphold themselves into, it looks like you. Sorry.
Looks like me. Oh. Oh, wait, what is this? Everly Sips Cup. Evilly Sips Cup.
You'll understand it later.
I wonder if that plays into the last episode. But anyways.
Either way, I think, like, I love all of the characters mainly because all of them have that second layer of depth to them. And with All Might, you know, he's a very relatable character when he's not All Might, but as someone who has like the number one hero tag under his name, his alter ego as like this larger than life superhero is something that like is admired and looked up to in like any person really.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing will go for all the other characters, but I think everybody in the show has like this persona on the outside that they're not, which is I would like to argue is their superhero persona, which they only show to the people outside, but under everything they all have like their own like setted insecurities
or anxieties
and problems and all of that type of stuff. And like almost every single character goes through that. Like the most, I guess, like rude and horrible character you can think of in the show even has deep-setted like problems in their lives
and issues. Well, now that you say it, it's like well, I did kind of notice like some of these characters, even though we don't dive into them like in this season, I feel like we're gonna be further into like figuring out what makes them tick, or maybe in Bakugo's case, like maybe I'm not giving that character a lot of credit. You know what I mean? Like I still feel like this season 1, I'm more invested in Deku and his storyline with All Might versus trying. Once I got to the point where I was like thinking, like in this situation where it's like, it's not about Deku here. It's not about just his story. It's about all of these people's story together. It's about the class together as a whole. So once I kind of switched my kind of thinking on that, I was like, okay, I'm now sold because this is the rules of this universe. I'm sold on this aspect.
Do you have any characters that you're kind of like waiting to see, like, oh, like I want to know about their backstory. I want to know like who they are as a person. Like, I want to get to the point of understanding their character a lot better than just their surface level.
In the case of episode 11 and 12, like, I want to see more of Bakugo, but not in relation to Deku.
Just by himself?
I feel like I want to see Bakugo in relation to the other character, the rock arm dude. Redhead.
I know who it is. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, but it feel like between those two characters, it's very similar character design. Like, you know, they look, without their quirks going like crazy, like they just look like, kind of like, I hate to say it, like carbon copies to some degree. Sometimes I get confused as like, oh yeah, with your costume, now I definitely know who you are. But without your costume, it's just like you're this character, but with redhead.
Yeah, basically.
But I feel like he feels more candid to talk about his stuff with these other characters versus dealing with Deku. And I feel like I would want to see his past or whatever he's dealing with, but with other characters versus. And I feel like I don't know if that's going to happen. And also, you're not allowed to let me know that it's happening. So that's something that I'm going to have to figure out later, you know, and see that thing. Because I feel like whenever Deku comes into the scene, Bakugo gets kind of like irrationally kind of angry or something, or like what's going on? How does he have all this power and stuff? He gets all hung up in that versus trying to build like this compelling story of like, where does his backstory come from? Does he feel like he needs expectations because of a family situation? You know what I mean? Maybe that's not even there. So we'll just kind of wait and see of that. Like I kind of want to see that character, and also kind of like the team, Deku and company. You know. Besco and Ida, you know, want to learn about more of their backstory. And Ida seems kind of like willing to open up in this season because we got to see like he's from like this affluent family of like other superheroes and stuff, and I feel like there's kind of like a deep-seated like expectations he's probably putting himself on because he seems very straight-laced of like, I have to be this rules-oriented person. So I want to see how that story kind of like develops. Also, then again, I feel like I have a bias because I kind of like Idas.
I need to draw an Ida somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta make space for Ida somewhere, either on my cup or my laptop or something.
It'll come up one day somewhere.
It'll manifest.
It'll manifest in itself somewhere, you know.
So, anyways, going back to the episode. So, episode 11 and 12, we're still at the JSU, right, which is like the hero trainings area for rescue and all that stuff. And in episode 11, we see a little bit of the aftermath of Deku, Frog, Frog,
Just change 2 letters and it'll be there.
Frogger. Sorry.
Her name is Froppy.
Froppy, and Mineta. I'm surprised I got Mineta then.
How did you not get Froppy, but you get Mineta? I don't understand.
My brain works in weird ways, apparently. We get to see a little bit of the aftermath. The three, Ada, not Ida, Deku and company sees their homeroom teacher, Aizawa, fighting with many of these different kind of villains. And we get to see the person with the hands on his face. He's counting down. And as I was watching that, I was like, why is he counting down? He's literally counting down because I think his quirk is counting down the amount of time a quirk can last. I don't know. That was my prediction right now. Like, I feel like he knows and expects like how when quirk ends. And I think that's where he catches Aizawa and like kind of like he does this move where he touches his elbow and his elbow starts to deteriorate. And that's kind of like a scary trait to have.
I mean, I'm just saying, but have you thought about maybe it being like related to a weakness?
So like his weakness is like
I'm just putting it out there just as a thing.
Oh wait, Aizawa's weakness or hand-face dude weakness?
I don't know.
Anyways, okay, just move on. If I don't understand, just move on. And you get to see other characters, and that's why I brought up the whole kind of like these characters working together. We get to see Bakugo and Strong Arms. Strong Arms. I'm gonna call them Strong Arms right now. Deal with their kind of villains in their like specific area. So it's kind of like a montage of seeing all these different classmates dealing with these enemies in weird different ways. We see like a hot and cold dude. I got weird nicknames for these people.
He's actually my favorite character.
Is he now?
Mm-hmm. His name is Todoroki.
Todoroki, he's very calm and calculating, and that's very interesting. That he kind of reminds me of Hand-Face Dude to some degree. I don't know if they're probably not related, but like just the kind of demeanor on how they kind of like approach things and how kind of like their speech pattern kind of reminds me of that a little bit. That's probably just coincidence and for the sake of like there's so many characters. They probably wanted to populate, and it's still the first season, so. Some characters are probably kind of masses of each other, you know what I mean? Like, you can't... I wouldn't say I shouldn't, like, like they... I'm not trying to say they can't make a bunch of characters with different depths and stuff, but it's still the first season, so it would be
There's like a while to go.
Yeah, it's a while to go before they're all developed. And then you see another group of students, the other person in charge of the class, like the student body there, Momo, with earphone jack, and Electro.
His name is
Kaminari. And we see the three trying to deal with their situation over there. And like I said before, it's like I really like how they like kind of like deal with those situations and how resourceful each kind of person is in those situations.
Do you like how it's like structured, like in episode wise or anything like that?
I don't think I have any pacing issues. I think I had the issue where there was unreasonable expectations, I guess.
Okay.
Where I was like, I was trying to build up this series as just like a Deku-centric series.
And that's not the case.
And that wasn't the case. Like, well, once I lived with the fact that if that wasn't the case, then I started to enjoy it like much more better.
I see.
Like getting it's part of like watching and viewing stuff is part of it is like gauging expectations, like making sure you're properly kind of like in the mindset of like watching something.
Right.
Because you could have a vaguey, very
a
like
vaguey,
but like a bad experience because you're expecting something that wasn't supposed to be the intentions of like a said story.
That's right. That's right.
So that's why I had like some hard feelings earlier.
Do you feel like a little bit better about it now? Like, are your feelings kind of?
I'm sold. I'm sold on the series at this point. Yeah, with these 2 episodes. Not just these 2 episodes, but the tail end of this season. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the very first part, it was Deku and like the mystery of All Might.
Mm-hmm.
But once it shifted and like we got to see more of the class and like the dynamic of these students, I started getting sold on the idea of like, okay, it's not about Deku, it's about everybody,
right? And like as a whole.
As a whole. And so we see Aizawa getting his ass kicked.
Which is horrible.
Which sucks because Tamura, the guy with the hands on his face, he brings out, he mentions that he's not the final boss. And I like how he like gamifies it. It's like, I'm not the final boss you're looking for. And like this big bird dude with an exposed brain comes out of nowhere. And also, I think I mentioned this on the podcast or while we were watching the season finale. I was just like, they mentioned that Nomu to some degree was bioengineered, and I was like thinking, can people just get quirks or something? You know what I mean? I when the All Might episode came out, I started the questions like, can people just get quirks through some weird science shenanigans? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like experimentation and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. And in episode 11, it ends with All Might coming out of nowhere. Which wasn't coming out of nowhere. It was Ida, contacting him and stuff like that. Right. And another thing, Ida and the
which one?
And 13. Sorry.
13, yeah.
13 are dealing with the situation with Ghost Dude? Teleporting Ghost Dude?
Ghost Dude? Who is Ghost Dude?
It's the guy that teleported all the villains to that one area.
Oh, him.
Yeah, his quirk is like warping people and I wouldn't say objects, just kind of like people to like different areas.
His whole thing is about like transportation. That is, you are on the nail on that. Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know how it.
You know how it works, right?
Yeah, I feel like, does he have to be at this place before? And if so, then he's been at that building once before. You know.
I think it's just wherever he is.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, it should be just wherever he is when he can use it.
Okay. And and this and like I said, this episode just ends with All Might kind of appearing, and everybody's just like, "Oh shit!"
Like getting ready.
Getting ready because episode 12 is when everything goes. Sorry, episode 12. We get to learn more about Nomu.
The Nomus.
Yeah, Nomu. He's
How do you feel about that character design, or like the character in general? Do you like the character? Do you not like it?
I like the character design. It feels kind of like a Bane kind of situation.
Like with the mask?
Yeah, like not like, I don't think he ever speaks a word, but kind of like the cartoon Bane, where it's just like it's just a strong guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
Like I felt like he was just kind of like the Frankenstein's monster to the situation. You know what I mean?
I do get exactly what you mean.
And I'm not to say like it's kind of like, I don't necessarily think or hope that he will get a backstory, but I feel like it is he's kind of like a tool of the villains.
He'll get explained at some point.
Okay, but so we get to learn his quirk. He has like a multi-quirk thing that apparently is supposed to be the secret weapon to get All Might killed. And sorry, I was trying to read my notes here because
you got a lot going on.
Yeah, I got a lot going on in my brain, and I don't want to talk about stuff in the 13th episode. Gotta make sure I don't accidentally spoil this for. I'm pretty sure this series has been on for like 3 years at this point.
It's been a good amount of time.
It's been a good amount of time, but also it's like I gotta respect if you are actually following this episode by episode, which you should be. But if you're actually following this episode by episode, I gotta respect that too. So.
Of course.
So in this episode, it's just the fight between All Might and Nomu, getting to figure out that that Aizawa and 13 are not dead.
Which is thank God.
Which is also, by the way, I when I saw episode 11, I was just like, holy shit, we're going there. We're getting like people getting killed in the first season, and then later we found out he's alive, and I started thinking, at what point did I assume he was alive? I was just like, he's getting his head crushed down like crazy. You get to see the concrete like getting crumbled all around him. I was just like,
it's pretty gnarly. Like what happens to him?
It's like what? It's not like Full Metal Alchemist levels of blood, but like like Dragon Ball's level of blood.
It's a good amount of.
It's a good amount of blood, but it's not like crazy copious amounts of blood. But yeah, All Might seems to kind of struggle with this monster Nomu.
Yes.
And towards the end of the episode, we get this kind of like oh shit moment of All Might is gonna like lose all his energy, and it takes. Well, what I said before, it doesn't take just All Might to deal with this situation. It takes a collection of the students plus these teachers to help fix the situation.
Yes,
you know what I mean,
it does.
And it really kind of like reinforces that idea, and it's a really good turnaround of like not it's not like not liking something, but it's a really good turnaround of having these unrealistic expectations and getting sold on them.
Yes.
So, what do you think about these episodes in general, though?
What do you mean by, like, what do I think about the episodes? You mean, like, just in general, my opinions on how the episode went?
Yeah, just, like, how it went. Like, I feel like these episodes has been very good. And been hitting all the marks of, like, being very entertaining.
Right.
And then on top of that, kind of, like, story elements of, like, beats of, like, we get to learn each character. And I kind of like how this series is a more of a show, don't tell situation.
Yes.
Because that's basically what they teach you in film school.
You show them.
You gotta show what's going on instead of like talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's great that in this season or in this series as a whole, before you get formally introduced of like the kind of like the narration of the whole like, oh, this is this person, this is this quirk, this is how it works.
You're showing the character first, right?
You're showing the character first. You get to kind of like see what they could kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically episodes before, like even towards the test episode.
Yeah.
You get to see what they do, and towards the end of this season, at least, you get to learn how specifically what their name, what their quirk is, how the quirk can work with other different quirks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I like about like kind of this series and season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's this episode.
To answer your question about like what I liked about this episode, I think these two particular episodes kind of set up for the most climatic portion of the season, and I've always been kind of like a weak person for that. Like I've always really liked like the climax of each arc in a series, and I think like with this one, as they're signing up for him to fight, it's like, oh my god, I want to see like where this goes, and two teachers are already knocked down. Like, is All Might also gonna go down, even if he is the best hero?
Yeah.
Of course, like when I feel like when I initially watched it, I think in the back of my head I was always like, you know what, he's like the main person, like he can't, die in a fight like this. But like in hindsight, as I've watched a lot of the future episodes that you will see in the future, I've learned not to expect that. which I don't know if that makes you worried or anything like that, or scared about the characters, but like.
Not to expect what again? Sorry.
Oh, I just have learned not to expect to be like, oh, these characters are invincible.
That's very fair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what you did sell me on the series is like these characters. I don't think you ever sold me on the idea like, oh, these characters are dying or going to die, but you set it up in a sense like these characters have limits.
Yes.
Yeah, and to those situations, I think some students don't necessarily know their limits. You know what I mean?
Like they're still kind of like figuring it out and stuff, right?
I guess that's why the whole point of having like a whole superhero school to like understand your limits and how to go about dealing with those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like having Deku is like a conduit of like you going through that situation of like you don't necessarily know what extent of your power because he doesn't know how to control it to some degree. You know what I mean?
I think he's still in the midst of trying to figure out like what having this power means to him, because like at this current point in time he's still really young. He's still trying to understand like himself with this power that All Might has given him, and I don't think he himself actually understands like the severity and the amount of power that he has as an individual in this world until later on into the series. So like I think you'll get to the point, he'll get there. But as of right now, I don't think he understands like the full on depth of like how much power he holds as being like this character.
And also kind of like the responsibility of it. You know what I mean?
With great power comes great responsibility.
It's kind of like the Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
It's like see when I say that it's like All Might is the Uncle Ben to Deku's Spider-Man. I hope that's not the case, though. That would be pretty sad. I would be really kind of devastated in that sense of, like, if All Might kind of kicks the bucket. But then again, I feel like it might happen, and I would be interested and want to see, like, in this series in particular, how death can be handled. You know what I mean? Because we've seen these characters, like, these super than normal humans, you know what I mean? Like, deal with these situations of like, oh, like we'll just beat up the bad guy and it's all hoorah. But what happens if, say, tragedy befalls these characters? You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that I like about Ruby, in this case, and even though some people don't think it's an anime. I'm still going to talk about it because this is my show. But anyways, what I was trying to get at is that death has meaning. You know what I mean? It has meaning in the sense that it'll affect these characters in both a positive or a negative way. There's consequences to that.
Right.
And how these characters deal with it is kind of like a reflection on them and how they go about themselves. You know, like how do they present themselves in this kind of world. You know what I mean? And that's what I kind of like about Ruby, and because it kind of respects that kind of like death. Because there's some animes it's like, oh yeah, I'm here. Or I had this problem with Game of Thrones in the sense that they brought back a character, and everybody was just kind of like, are we not going to talk about this?
Oh.
Are we not gonna talk about how this person came back to life?
Like, is it just gonna be a thing that's here, right?
Yeah, or because. And of course, I'm not trying to make the whole argument that the books are better than the show or whatever. I'm not making that judgment call. But in the books in themselves, is like they treat death as this person, even though it came back, they're changed to some degree. They're not the same. They're not the same person or something like that. But for My Hero, as far as I know, sets up the world in the sense that death can be finite. To be fair, it hasn't happened, but I would be interested if something like, say, All Might, this Obi-Wan Kenobi character, kicks the bucket, and Deku is like the Luke Skywalker of this universe.
I think another thing that we tend to forget, and I think this goes with actually a lot of things in life, is that in the world of My Hero, a lot of these heroes are seen as larger than life characters and beings, but if you put it in the context of like how everything develops in My Hero, it's like honestly the only difference between them and the people that are just kind of like going through everyday life and working is just that they chose to use their powers in a way that was more in the realm of being a superhero as a career choice.
Yeah.
And so, like, as much as they have this like power that is like strong and stuff like that, it's because they honed it with their own abilities. Like, if they didn't choose to do that, they could have just been like a regular everyday citizen in Japan.
Yeah.
So I think like when it comes to like what you're talking about, a lot of these characters we forget are just technically everyday normal people who have the career of being a superhero.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're above everyone else. They just like had the want to improve their powers in order to protect the world that they live in. That's like the only distinction between them.
It kind of reminds me of like the idea of like celebrity, in a weird way.
Celebrities in what way?
Only because All Might and like some of these like that episode where like the fire alarm happened. It was like all these to some degree. If you're gonna become a hero, there's still kind of like that baggage of like you're still above a human. You know what I mean? And All Might to some degree feels like he can't go out in his big form because everybody's just gonna be like, oh my god, it's All Might. You know what I mean? So it's just a small anecdote. I really, it's just a small detail that I saw. I think
in the future, as you're watching it progress further, you're gonna see like the whole celebrity and superhero kind of like image. They actually are very similar to each other because there are a lot of facets about being a superhero in My Hero that are about them, like how they portray themselves as people versus how they actually are as just like a person.
Yeah. And how they act and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you have any like favorite moments for the past 2 episodes that you just watched from My Hero, or is it just kind of like?
I think what I like more, something that really kind of impacted me was just kind of like the when Nomu came out of nowhere and literally kind of like bites down on Aizawa, because I was just kind of like. It was like one of those moments where I was just like, "Oh shit, they're actually doing this! Like we're going there." And for me as a audience member, I was just like, "Oh shit!" Like Deku and Frappy and now I'm forgetting the other guy's name. Mineta. Like just witness some like crazy shit. You know what I mean? And all these characters to some degree, they're all just kind of kids. You know what I mean? And now they're dealing with something that not necessarily kids have to deal with. And they're kind of like thrust upon kind of like an adult situation.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a moment that kind of like caught me not kind of like off guard a bit. Another moment that I noticed was when All Might appeared and in his mind he's consciously thinking about his limitations. His whole his quirk has kind of like a time limit. And he can't necessarily like get away from that. So that was something that I noticed too.
I will say this, like as I'm thinking about it right now, as we're talking about this, the issue with the Nomu is very similar, or I'm 100% sure for you, it's going to be very similar to when you find out in Brotherhood about the stones.
It's like a red herring situation.
What do you mean?
Like, in film, there's like this idea that the whole movie was built on this one singular like object or person or storyline.
Oh, no, it's not like that.
Oh, it's not like that? Because when the Philosopher's Stone was part of Fullmetal Alchemist, I kind of saw when we figure out kind of like the twist of the Philosopher's Stone and what it takes to make a Philosopher's Stone, it was kind of like at the beginning, it was more about trying to fix their bodies, but it switches from obtaining the Philosopher's Stone to do that to we shouldn't let this happen, and kind of like this whole kind of like alchemy thing has kind of gone astray and awry, and we got to make sure this whole conspiracy thing of all this stuff happening doesn't happen.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that like I don't think it's like as heavily emphasized as being a thing like the Philosopher's Stone is in Brotherhood is, but it's just that when you find out what goes like into like the details of the Nomu and stuff like that, you're just kind of sitting there. You're like,
oh, you're just like, no. Okay, we'll see it. We'll definitely see it. Mm-hmm. So, with that being said, next week's episode will be our season finale. Yay. We're going to be talking about the last episode, and we're going to talk about kind of like our impressions of the whole season, what to expect on season 2 of our show. Of anime goodness.
I might end up watching anime with him now.
Yeah. Next season, we'll have an actual name for our anime podcast. So till then, like, subscribe, ring that bell, and I hope we see y'all in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.